Hey, y'all. Let's talk for a minute about something that is extremely common and almost universal, actually. That's a psychological truth called intermittent reinforcement. I know it sounds like a scientific name, psychological name, something that may not interest you, but you need to be interested in it because it is driving your kids' behavior. It's the concept that you would think that if something gets reinforced every time, like if you gave your dog a treat every time he did something, he's more likely to do that behavior. And actually, it's intermittent reinforcement, not continuous reinforcement, that actually has the most strength to make behaviors stick around. So, when you think about something a kid does, like whining, a parent oftentimes tries to ignore whining, and then eventually gives in to the whining and asks what do they want, or gives in to whatever it is they're whining about. And in their mind, the parent is thinking, I made them wait, I frustrated them, and I ignored them, and eventually they're going to get the message that that whining doesn't really work very well. But in reality, what they've really learned is if I just whine long enough, if I just whine longer, I always get what I want. And that intermittent reinforcement is actually shown to be 4 times as powerful as continuous reinforcement. So if every time he whined, you gave him something, you would get less whining than if you eventually give in to the whining. So just think about that, about a whole bunch of different behaviors that kids do. Tantrums are the same way. If your kid throws a tantrum and you try to ignore it, and then you try to ignore it some more, and then eventually the tantrum gets him whatever he wants, you're going to get more tantrums. Whereas, obviously the answer to that problem would be to not give in to the tantrums, but giving in intermittently is the worst thing you can do. Complaining about food is the same way. They sit at the table and they talk about the food and they move it around and they complain about the food, and you try your best not to engage with it, and then eventually you give in and you get them something else that they want to eat. That intermittent reinforcement has once again caused him to learn, or her, that complaining about the food, if I just complain long enough, I'm going to get what I want. And that intermittent reinforcement has made it stronger than if you give it at the very first complaint. So it's kind of one of these things where you either don't give in at all or you give in immediately, just because making them wait, making them struggle really makes the problem worse. Going to sleep is the same way. Kids coming back out some more, and eventually you lay down with them, or put them in your bed, or do something like that. They've learned, I just need to do it longer and hang in there. For older kids, chores would be the same way. Are you nagging your kids to do the chores? If you aren't having to nag your kids to do the chores, that's a learned behavior by them. They know they can get away with it, and they're not going to do it until you've nagged them to a certain point. So through intermittent reinforcement, you've actually made them more likely to struggle with getting them to do the chores. So you'd really be better off just not saying anything at all than saying something and then not following through, and then not following through, and then eventually giving in to the kid. All of that is just an intermittent reinforcement paradigm that is incredibly difficult for parents to overcome. And that's it. Subscribe to my channel. Love talking to you guys. Love doing this stuff. And see you next time.